Hello, everyone. This is Aditya Mehta, and you are listening to podcast on personality development. Learning is a beginning to start something new in your life, and believe me, it serves a lot in improving your productivity. And today, in this episode number 2 of the season, boost your productivity. Me and the guest of this entire season, Elena Pastore, is going to talk about learning. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to today's episode. And as always, we have a leadership and career coach, Elena Pastore. Hello, Elena. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's so good to see you after a week. We know, like I do completely understand that we have been recording it every week, a new episode, and I'm really glad that you are able to find time for this podcast, and it's really special. And just before the show started, before the recording started, there is one community member who gave you a wonderful compliment. I won't be saying her name because she doesn't want to share her name, but people everywhere are really excited to know more about you, and they really want to know what you have to share with them. So it's really amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited to continue to share and,
Wonderful.
hopefully help even more people than those that have already listened to the episodes that we've got.
For sure. And I'm pretty sure your voice is reaching to a lot of people because, the audience do share the episodes. And I have learned that from the previous year's Spotify Wrapped, that most of the users are sharing the episodes via WhatsApp. So 81% of the audience are sharing this episode. So I'm pretty sure your voice is reaching to a lot of people. Getting started with today's episode, how learning improves productivity. And I believe that is something which is really close to my heart as well. And I would like to know your initial thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, so about learning and productivity, I think that knowledge just in general helps us to be a better version of ourselves. And when it comes to productivity and some of the other topics we've talked about, like procrastination, right? Things getting in the way of productivity, in addition to how to be more productive, it's important to look at it from both places. So, what's hindering me and then what's helping me? And a lot of times, through understanding what's hindering you or holding you back or causing you to procrastinate, is a learning that will help you to be more productive or to be more efficient or to be more, whatever it is that you're trying to be. Usually that failure comes with a learning or a lesson. And I know that I talked about NLP quite a few times in the past episodes. And for me, doing or being on the receiving end of some of those tools and techniques, I have had a lot of learnings that I've been able to apply to my own life. And I really think productivity in itself is a byproduct of knowing how to live your life in the way that's best for you. So, a lot of times I think people think about productivity specifically related to work or specifically related to chores or things that they feel are being hyper measured. But you can also think about productivity in a more holistic sense and applied to all areas of life. So, for example, when you're maybe cooking a recipe for dinner, how could you be the most productive with that cooking? So, I chop a lot of vegetables. And what I've learned is I can put two carrots or two stalks of celery next to each other and chop them both at the same time. And
Yeah.
that helps me be more productive.
Right.
So when you are able to be very reflective and introspective about your experiences in any area of life, and you give yourself the space, brain, the brain space, the brain energy, you can come up with your own ways to be more productive because you've given yourself what you need to recharge or to think differently.
Wonderful. That's a great initial thought, I would say, and I completely understand that. And that's a great example of chopping vegetables. I really loved that example somehow because I do cooking sometimes, and I can completely relate with that. And it's a COVID product as well for me. So I learned cooking in during the COVID time when I was at home. So I completely
Mm-hmm.
understand that, and it takes me back to the very zeroth episode, the introductory episode as well, where you talked more about productivity as a holistic sense as well. So, audience, do listen to that one as well. And I'm pretty sure it's going to add more value to your life if you haven't heard that one. uh you know Going ahead in this show, Elena, like, I mean, the way you have spoken, it seems that you have learned a lot of things, and I believe you might have had some great experiences in your life as well. So how this learning new things have had an impact in your life, and if you can share an experience or two with the audience about learning something new and that helped you to improve your productivity.
Yeah, so the first thing that's coming to mind for me right now is learning about self-sabotaging behaviors or tendencies and how they can become so time consuming that they then cause you to not be productive. So, for example, being very controlling, right? That's a trait that a lot of people have. And on the surface, it can be positive and it can seem like it's a good thing, right? So if you're controlling, you have a very specific way you do things. Maybe you make sure that things are done the same time every time they're done. And again, this can be at work, at home, with family, it doesn't matter. But yet, it can be bad because if somebody steps out of line or misses something, if you really have those hyper controlling tendencies, you're going to go back and say, well, this needs to be redone, or you missed this little detail, or this isn't good. We need to start over because this isn't perfect. And so that's an example of a negative trait that someone can have that they may think is very good, that they're ensuring quality control or they're ensuring consistency. But then when you really think about it and peel back the layers, you realize it's actually hindering productivity because the thing may have very well been fine the way that it was, the other person did it. But it's because you hyper fixate on these things that it actually makes it worse in the end. And so when you talk about learning new things, I would encourage everybody to think about what's something new I can learn about myself, about an area where maybe I am causing myself to not be as productive as I can be. And it's often hard for us to notice those things because to us, to self, it seems very positive. And it's like, well, how could that ever be a bad thing? I don't see how that could ever be negative or how that could ever hinder me. But that is the very problem. So the next thing to think about is, well, since I'm so in it, how can I even begin to realize what these things are for me? Think about what are some tendencies or traits or behaviors that you have that not everybody else has. So the controlling thing is a good one. Personally, for me, sometimes the controlling shows up. The really biggest thing for me is people pleasing tendencies. I will spend a lot of time thinking about, well, what's the outcome that's going to be best for everybody? And on the surface, that sounds great. But if I lose sleep
Right.
over trying to figure out what's best for everybody and pleasing everybody, it's impossible the bigger the group gets. So then
Hmm.
if I'm losing sleep over it, I'm not going to be as refreshed and energized the next day. And then I can't be as productive because I'm preoccupied or worrying. So it really is not transactional at all. This process of how can we be productive? How can we learn from ourselves? How can we change our ways? It's not transactional at all. Everything is very pattern based. And so I think if someone can just start by identifying one pattern they have and start to crack that code and break that down, that's a great way to start having those learnings come up so that they can then change their behavior to be more productive.
Wow, that's a great answer. I mean, self-interpretation is something which everyone has to learn in their lives, and this somehow takes me back to the first episode of this podcast, back in the year 2020, where I had asked the audience in the very first episode that write down your traits in the paper. Okay, and write down the 10 good qualities you have and the 10 bad qualities you think you might have, and see how it works out for you, and 10 things which you need to improve on, and start working one at a time. And I believe that's something which I it like what you said about it did reminded me about that, and I used to write that every day in my diary as well, whatever the things that I have to improve on, and I still write today as well, after taking some constructive feedbacks from the people I meet. So it somehow is really encouraging for me right now to talk about it as well. Like, way back when we met the first time, you had told me some of the feedback, and I totally understood that. And that's a kind of self interpretation which people has to learn. And the second thing which you said about controlling things, uh, which is really relatable, especially in the workplaces or even in the personal life as well, where there are certain times that we are dependable on other people to complete their task so that we can complete our task as well. And during this time, we know that the other person is not doing their work on time, maybe of certain genuine reason, of course, but they haven't done that on time, and it affects your productivity as well, because you were always thinking that that particular thing had to be done during that time, and if it's not
Mm-hmm.
done, it's going to affect my productivity, because I'm just thinking and worrying about it, that it's not happened. But instead, if you have some other work during that time, you can complete that work first, so that the other person, when he completes his work, he can give it to you, and then you can start working on that. uh, so yeah, that's what I feel about it. So two great relatable examples which you gave, and I believe that's really something which all of us need to think upon as well. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. uh,
Mm-hmm.
Going ahead, you mentioned about controlling as well. You mentioned about you invited everyone to this self interpretation technique as well, that writing down and thinking about those qualities which we have. Now
Mm-hmm.
let's come to the more technical part as well. Like, I have been in a corporate industry from last many years, and what I have learned is, okay, like, people learning those people who have been in the industry from last 20-25 years, who haven't seen much technology, but recently it's a tech savvy world as well. Like, we are communicating on Zoom, right? So at a certain age, people feel that it's not worth to learn new things, and let's continue the things the way they are, and that's where the learning stops. So the mindset over here, which I'm trying to connect with, is the people who have grew older. They feel that after a certain age, they shouldn't be learning anything else, because they feel that they are not capable enough to learn something new after a particular age. So what would you like to say about that?
Yeah. So I think here, a couple things. Productivity, as I just kind of implied, is about much more than using technical tools or software to be productive. Productivity is a lot about your mindset, your strategy, your approach, because you could give someone the greatest tool or the greatest software, but if they don't know how to use it or don't know how to use it right, it's not going to help them be productive. So it's really more about the person than the tool or the technique. And when we think about productivity a lot, we think about developing productive behaviors.
Hmm.
So we think of productivity typically not as just a one-time event or today I'm going to be productive and tomorrow I'm not. We think about how can we set ourselves up to be productive long term. And so I'll give you an example. Sometimes when I use Excel, I don't use Excel a whole lot. I use it for very basic functions like finding the sum, but I don't really use advanced functions in Excel. So if there's one day where I have a long list of things in Excel and I need to do a minorly advanced formula, it might just be more productive for me to do it manually than to look up what the correct formula is to do it automatically. Because if I know that I only need to do this thing once every 6 months or once every year, I'm probably better off just doing it manually in the moment. Whereas if I know this is something I'm going to have to do every week or every other week, then it's going to be worth my time to pause and figure out how to do it the automated way or find the correct formula. So, for people that are, if you're saying this exclusively about people that are older, they may say, well, if I was going to have this job for another year or another 5 years, then it may be worth it for me to learn these new skills or do these new things. But if they believe the learning curve is going to take longer than they will be employed, or it's going to take them longer to learn it than the time they'll spend actually doing the task, they may have that same mentality that I just shared of it's just going to be easier in the long run for me to do it manually. I'm not saying that's always true, and it's not always the best or the most productive line of thinking. I think for a lot of people, though, especially those that are older, they justify it by saying, well, the amount of time I realistically have still in the workforce, I don't care enough, or it's going to take me too much time to learn it. And I think that's a big limiting belief that a lot of them probably do have is the perception of the length of time it takes to learn something new versus the value it's going to bring them. So the opportunity cost. They tend to think there's a high opportunity cost when really it's, I think in a lot of cases, a lot lower. And that doesn't just apply to older people in the workforce, that applies to a lot of people about a lot of things. The perception of the opportunity cost is just totally out of proportion. And then people just disqualify themselves or disqualify the opportunity because of that perception without really even thinking about it or looking into it at all.
Wow, that's really well said. Although I do have a follow-up question on that. Like you mentioned about
Of
Excel
course.
and you mentioned about the technologies as well, that once you know that you have to use it very frequently, uh, you just want to make sure that you want to learn it because you know that you're going to use that very frequently, right? And there are people who actually use it frequently, but they really feel that they have this mindset that if they are going to learn something new, they are not going to learn it because they are not capable of learning it. Okay. And at the same time, as you mentioned, that they also should be thinking about the long run, like how it's going to help them in a long run, and they do think
Mhm.
about it as well. It's not like they are not thinking it, but what they are thinking is that currently the work is going on, it's happening, it's not stopped, and it's fine if it's going that way. Okay. So you know if there is any way that they could encourage themselves that to learn something new. Okay. What would you say about that? Because like I have seen people at the age of 75, like I have been a teacher before, and I've seen people at the age of 75, they are really enthusiastic about learning something new, and they did learn it, and they are they went to they went to back to job at the age of 75. They worked 2 or 3 more years, and it was quite surprising for me as well, but they did it. Okay. So what do you think, how people can encourage themselves to learn something new whether older or younger, okay, but they don't have this mindset that they are not capable of learning it.
Yeah. So the mindset of I'm not capable of learning it or I can't learn it, that's a limiting belief. So the first thing that I say to people is ask yourself, is it humanly possible? Right. So, for example, humans need oxygen to breathe. Is it humanly possible to live in an environment where there's no oxygen? No, it's not humanly possible. We need oxygen to breathe.
Right.
So the first question is it possible for the human species to do it? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Next question. Has someone of my age, someone of my education level, someone of my background. So you take whatever their reasoning is. I am not capable. Why do you believe you're not capable? Oh, because I'm 75. Or why do you believe you're not capable? Oh, I only have a high school diploma. So whatever that reason is, you take that and you say, do you know anyone or have you heard of anyone that also just has a high school diploma? Or that also is 75 and was able to learn this thing. And then if they say no, then you can share someone that you know that was able to do it. Um, and if they still don't believe that they can, well, at that point, they should believe that they can because someone else in a similar situation to them of why they believe they can't can. So that should kind of be the proof to them that it's humanly possible. Someone else that looks like me did it, therefore I can too. If that's not enough, then you can kind of keep asking similar questions and more examples. And well, why else do you think you can't do it? Why else do you believe you're not capable? And just see what those other reasons are, and then give them examples that contradict or teach them that basically what they're saying holds no weight, that it's not true. And so typically people start to say, yeah, you're right. I guess I could try. It starts to loosen those boundaries a little bit
Right.
depending on how someone or how stuck someone is or how in their problem they are, it might take a little bit longer to get them to believing they can. So if they're close to the edge of believing they can, it might be really easy. But if they really, really are stuck that I cannot do it and there's nothing you could say that's going to convince me otherwise, it's just getting that person to just consider their problem in a little bit of a different light. And you might have to come back in a day or in a week or in a month and just keep loosening up those boundaries until that person can say, you know what, let me try.
Right. That's a great thing. And I believe that's gonna encourage a lot of people as well. The very first thing, and it's very basic as well. Is it humanly possible? And I believe that's one thing which is going to open a lot of doors of mindset for the people. So I believe that's a great answer you gave there. And like I have been in the teaching industry and I have seen many people personally to grow when they are really enthusiastic about learning and they don't have any sort of limiting belief, although sometimes when I have taught something which is a little difficult for them, they start to have their own doubts, but that has not stopped them in a very long run. So I believe uh, I should share some of the stories on this podcast as well. So I believe people can learn more about learning things. And I believe that's a very well said answer. One last thing which I would like to ask you, and this I'm asking you because you are not only a career coach, but you are a leadership coach as well. And many a times, okay, leaders, okay, whether it's in the workplace, uh, or let's say any leader, okay, who is running a community, who is running let's say a tracking plans, you who is running something like a readers community or anything like that, okay, what can leaders actually do to encourage more learning? Because nowadays you see that leaders have to be more optimistic about learning new things, especially in workplace where there is a constant new technology which is coming in the corporate world, and AI is coming on, and each and everything which is going on, right? And they always make sure that you know what, we have to make sure that the new technology comes into the picture and people has to use it. And
Mhm.
sometimes what happens is it is just being burdened on them, burdened on the team, that this is the new technology or this is the new software and this is what we are going to use now. And instead of doing that, is if there is any way where leaders can actually encourage them to learn new technology so that it can help them and the community build stronger and stronger in every coming day.
Yeah, so two things here. The first one, always doesn't matter if it's technology or something else, the leader needs to be the role model because you can't ask someone else to do something that you're not willing to do. We've seen that in every industry, everywhere. That's just a tried and true. I see that as a fact.
Yeah.
We can't ask people to do the things that we are not willing to do, willing to learn, willing to practice. And the second thing is that people need to see the value in it. So even if you are a leader that everybody respects, that you are loved, that everybody will do what you say without question, there will be less engagement and motivation to do it without people understanding the value, the backstory, or why it's necessary and how it's going to make a difference.
Hmm.
If the leader is simply being forced to do it and the leader also doesn't agree with it, well, that's a different can of worms. And that's maybe a bigger culture question that would be out of the leader's hands. But even if that is the case, the leader needs to portray to the best of their ability that this is something that's important. This is something that's going to make a difference. This is something that is going to be valuable. And you shouldn't just do it because I'm doing it and because I'm telling you, but because it's going to make your life better. Um, it's not always the case. But when it is the case, it will be a lot easier to get the buy-in, for leaders to get buy-in when they take that approach.
Well, that's wonderfully said. Leading from the front is always the best option for the leader to make sure that the other people are doing the same thing as the leader is doing. And I believe I will take a cricketing example over here. Like in the book, which I read about Saurav Ganguly, a century is not enough. In that book itself, it was said that when a batsman comes to open or a batter comes to open the innings, okay, he has to make sure that he leads from the front and he hits some shots, and to be a role model for other batters who are going to come in next, to show them what can be done on this kind of pitch. So I believe that's something which I do relate with. And currently it's Cricket World Cup as well, which is going on. So I just thought of sharing that as well. But yeah, people of India do love cricket, and I believe they will be really happy to see this example, I guess, somewhere. But yeah,
Good.
that's a great thing. Leading from the front is one of the best example for any leader to encourage the team. I believe so. That's a great thing which you said there, and I completely understand that, and I completely relate with that, and I'm pretty sure audience is going to relate with that as well. However, this is somewhere that we on that note we are going to end today's episode. And I'm pretty sure audience, I'm talking to you. If you feel that this episode and this podcast adds value in your life, then make sure to share it with your loved ones, because they need to improve their productivity as well. It's not only you, but it's them, right? So, with that being said, thank you so much for listening to this episode. See you in the next one. Till then, peace out.